I'm going to give you a very facetious answer on the surface of it. None. We have all the same powers as a regular person in their own home or business. There are no special powers granted by virtue of being a security guard, and I need candidates and clients to understand that. However, there is one circumstance where security guards do have a little bit of extra, more leeway under the law. Nothing grants you absolute power over anyone. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms never goes away. Your legal liability, if you use excessive force on somebody, you are absolutely criminally responsible for that, without question, just the same as a regular citizen. And that shocks a lot of people. I think they see a lot of security guards in their patrol vehicles and their bullet-resistant vests, no such thing as a bulletproof vest, and they see them with all the equipment on their belts, and they see the similarity to police officers, and they automatically assume, oh. Nothing could be further from the truth. Now, if I am working the front desk of a condominium, the law gives me the same authority to make a citizen's arrest as anyone else living or working in that building. That's right. The cleaner has the same authority as a security guard. The resident of the 12th floor condo has the exact same rights as a security guard when it comes to things like powers of arrest. So, what powers do we have? We have our ability to observe. We have our uniform, which is actually, funny enough, in the law, in the use of force laws. All right? The officer presence is very much a deterrent, and that's a principal reason why we're there. But our biggest power we have is our judgment skills. How are we going to treat the people during this incident? Am I going to treat a normal resident the same as, for example, the repeat customer homeless client? Note I use the word customer. We're not sitting here to try and abuse him simply because he's homeless or not one of our direct clients. But do I have the power to compel him to move off the property? Yes. Because I have been hired by an agent of the owner of the property, I am sitting there with the express purpose of being able to walk out there and ask him to leave. Do you really think it's appropriate to use force on somebody who's simply refusing to leave the property? If it takes you 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes to convince them to leave the property, you have done the most incredible job I think you could have possibly done. You have avoided unnecessarily assaulting someone. So I can't speak enough to, when it comes to powers, some security guards do let that go to their head. They do start thinking that because of the uniform, it makes them all big and bad. There are some exceptions to the rules. The Innkeepers Act, for example, does permit those who are working on behalf of a hotel or a bar, for example, to eject people. But the myth that a bouncer can simply open the front door of the bar with your head, that is absolutely wildly inappropriate and will probably lead to a jail sentence. Plus, they'll never be able to work in security again if they do that. So there is this myth, kind of a myth of omission. Nobody really talks about it, but they kind of assume that bouncers have some kind of special powers, and they really don't. They're acting with the consent of the owner, who is now liable for everything a security guard does, whether they were there or not, makes no difference. So you do really have to allow clients to determine how the outcome's going to go. Numerous times I have asked somebody to leave. They've refused, and I have simply continued my demand. When we have enough guards, we may, in fact, lay hands on them, not in an assaultive way, in a way to control them. We may grab their wrist and put a hand behind their elbow, and we will march them out to the door. We will have somebody in front of us to go open that door so we don't have to slam him into anything at all. And we have that many guards, not because of really a show of force, although it helps to deter this guy and say, well, there's too many guards to fight here. Let's be peaceful. But it is mostly so that we can take this person down to the floor. If they reach for a weapon, if they turn violent, we can bring them down with a minimum of injury to them. If I am fighting one-on-one with somebody in a bar or other place, I am probably going to have to use more force than as if we have four people surrounding him. If we have four people surrounding him, logic says that we can each take a corner, we can bring him down. One person can be responsible for making sure that his face and head don't hit the ground, right? So, as far as powers go, there isn't anything that grants us the authority to start whooping anybody's backside. So I want that myth way out of there first. Secondly, though, we have the power of consent of the owner. So if we do ask somebody to leave for any reason, or realistically for no reason at all, though you better not do that one, if you have somebody who is behaving in a way that is going to threaten the peace or security of your property, you absolutely do have the right to ask them to leave. And if they refuse, I will generally inform them, listen, man, you can leave peacefully with me or you can leave with the cops. It's completely up to you. Make your choice now. And usually what you'll get at that point is a little bit of return fire verbally. You may get a few choice insults lobbed towards your uniform on the way out, but they left. It's like scratching an itch. All of a sudden they're just gone and everything's peaceful. And what you have to do is on your way back into your post, you have to take some really good deep breaths and expel all of the tension you have. And then go write your report. Okay, so here is something that I also need to clear up. If you detain someone, you've arrested them. The word arrest literally means to stop their forward progress. So if I have a shoplifter that is on the way out of a store, all right, and I walk out in front of them and I put my hand up like this, have I detained them? Yes, of course I have. Okay, can a security guard do that? Yes. The key word is always going to be reasonable. Whenever you are thinking about your actions, or if you're thinking about a security guard's actions that you saw, there have been security guards in the news, sometimes for adverse reasons. I can think of a few right now. Okay. It must not be assaultive. Let's face it, in Canada, we don't start fights. We finish them. Boy, howdy, can we finish them here, right? All throughout our history, that's been part of Canadian ethos. And that is really part of the law. There's a big time. If you started it, boy, you're going to have a judge looking funny at you at some point down the line. Okay, so, can we? Yes. Should we? No. What I will do is approach them from the side and I will say, hello there. My name is Mark, and you know that I'm from loss prevention, right? Okay. Well, listen, we're going to have an off-the-record conversation, you and I. Now, there's no such thing, of course, but I want to put them at ease. I want to say, look, there don't have to be formal consequences for you if you cooperate with me here. This is no big deal. It's just a game you and I are playing. If you give me back the stuff, I will bar you from the property and let you go. That's it. Plain and simple. The number of times that I have learned to use that in shoplift instead of an outright arrest, because the law says that if a security guard arrests someone, we have to hand them over to the police forthwith, which is the strongest word in legal language. Forthwith means immediately, sooner than now. Yes, absolutely. Should you? No, I'd rather you didn't. But if I see somebody assault somebody, the first thing I'm going to say to them is, you're under arrest for assault. Usually what happens then is they turn around and they look at me and go, you can't arrest me. And I tell them, I just did. You're not allowed to leave. It is amazing and astounding how many times the police pull up and I'm still having a lively and spirited debate with them over whether or not I can actually arrest them. And it always comes back to, yeah, I just did. I told you you're under arrest. The law says you have to stop and wait for the police. Isn't that funny? A lot of security guards don't think that that's part of their toolkit. And absolutely it is. To wrap up, very simple answer, yes, a security guard can arrest somebody. And in other countries, they are much quicker to arrest. It is almost a default position. It's almost like they have a scoreboard somewhere with the amount of arrests. I'm sure they do in some cases. Arrest is not a toy. Arrest is not a game. Arrest is depriving somebody of their rights, however temporarily, under the Criminal Code of Canada and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You'd better be perfect if you arrest someone. But to answer the question, yes, as long as they deliver them to the police immediately. Yes, a security guard can arrest someone. A citizen's arrest is what's referred to as a common law procedure. Basically, a citizen's arrest or any other common law procedure is a procedure that's not normally happening via a police officer. So a citizen's arrest doesn't involve force. Generally speaking, neither do the cops. A lot of times when the cops show up, the only force they use is to forcibly put your hands behind your back and actually handcuff you. So very often I haven't had to resort to handcuffs when I'm accomplishing a citizen's arrest. What it is a citizen has seen someone do something. Now, there are two criteria for a citizen's arrest. If you see somebody off your property accomplish what's called an indictable offense. An indictable offense just means that a jury has to give the prosecution, the government, permission to go ahead and deprive you of your liberty. Generally speaking, it's going to be 2 years worth of prison or more if it's an indictable offense. And a really easy way to know if it's indictable or not is to think of the crime of assault. Should a citizen be arresting anybody for less than the crime of assault? My submission is no, because that's basically where the indictable begins anyway, and the law allows you to arrest for an indictable offense not to do with you or your property. There's a second circumstance under which a citizen may arrest without warrant, and what happens is if you see something minor, less than assault, happen, but it's on or in relation to your property, or it happens to you. So if somebody, for example, goes to steal your wallet, can you arrest them? Yes. Yes, the law permits that in a citizen's arrest. But what's the next step that you absolutely have to do? You absolutely have to call the police immediately and have them come take the offender off of your hands. And they're going to review to make sure that what you did falls under the law. So if you're in doubt whether you should accomplish a citizen's arrest or not, whether you're a security guard or not, your default answer should be, that's right, no. If you're not in doubt, leave, or if you are in doubt, leave it out. If you're not sure what you're doing, don't do it. So to sum up quickly, a citizen's arrest is anybody other than a police officer, making an arrest. Okay. Police officers have special powers. They can arrest anyone for any criminal offense that they find. You, on the other hand, cannot, unless it is indictable, assault or worse, or in relation to you and your property. So somebody is stealing from you, somebody is doing something to your property, then you're allowed to arrest for anything, no matter how minor. I'm going to separate this into two questions. Can a security guard forcibly search your bag? No. No, no, no. Absolutely not. Can a security guard ask you to search your bag? Absolutely. Let's talk about a condition of entry search. That's a very formal title for when you want to go into the bar. If there's a security guard parked at the entrance of a bar, can he grab your bag from you and search it? No, that's your property. But can he say, if you want to come in, I have to search your bag? Yes, absolutely. And that then devolves to your choice. If you want to go into that property, then you open your bag, let the security guard take a quick look through, pass, go enjoy your favorite beverage of choice. Or your other option is to turn around and leave. There is another time when a security guard can search. It is to immediately recover evidence or to search for weapons. However, I have always been counseled, and I have always counseled those working beside me and alongside me, that you will never search someone's bag. If you are concerned that there are weapons within that bag or something dangerous to you, separate the bag from the person. We will take them to the security office. We will sit them down. We will make sure that their purse or bag is within their sight the entire time, but not within their reach. And then I will simply stand between them and their bag so that they can't reach it, presuming that if they go into that bag, they're probably going to bring something out that's going to hurt me. And while we're on the subject of that, I once got sprayed full in the face by hairspray. So is that a weapon? Yes. It is absolutely something that can possibly, and I had difficulties with my eyes for about a week afterwards. So I want you to understand that this should not deter you from searching for weapons, but you had better be able to clearly explain why to an angry judge. That's someone's personal property. And I tell my guards all the time, absolutely not. If we see a weapon, for example, that is in plain sight in the vehicle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for your keys and I am going to lock the car. I'm going to make it extremely tough for you to get to that weapon. And boy, somebody had better on my team have already had their phone out and be calling the cops. If we got weapons present, leave it to the police. But that's only advice. Can a security guard legally search your vehicle? Not generally in public, and this is a bit of a gray area in court. But if you wish to drive onto a property and there is a condition of search policy put in place by the owners or their representatives, yes, at that point, vehicles can be searched. We have had policies of vehicle searches at campgrounds, for example. We have had policies of vehicle searches at well, I don't want to say the name out loud necessarily, but at festivals, music festivals. And boy, have we recovered illicit substances from those. We had some where we had to actually have police officers there with us. And what we then said is when we approached a window, we would say, ma'am, so we're going to ask you to do a voluntary search, or you're going to turn your vehicle around and depart the grounds. And that was really easy for us because then we had consent. If you agree for us to search your vehicle, now we're going to search your vehicle, right? Here's another great question for you to think about for a few seconds. If you've given permission to a security guard to search your vehicle, or better yet, security guards, if you have permission to search a vehicle, can the owner or occupant of that vehicle then withdraw that consent? The answer is absolutely. If you're halfway through the search, you're getting close to the dope or the weaponry, and they get nervous and say, stop searching, guess what you have to do? Stop searching. Same thing goes with searches of persons. I will not permit my staffs to search people unless it is a condition of entry search. For example, we had a St. Patrick's Day event a little while ago where ownership was adamant because of some, we'll call them personal disputes between rival factions that were attending this event, that everyone would be searched head to toe. So at that point, we made sure that we had 4 female guards on site at all times, and we allowed people to opt for search by female guards, but we informed everybody partway through the line, I would go out and I would tell everybody, you are going to be searched in great detail when you are coming through the door. You are going to have your person searched. Yes, you are going to have to shake out clothing, etc. Yes, ladies, we are going to ask you to shake out your hair. And even gentlemen with advanced hairstyles, we're getting them to shake out their hair. That's right. So can we? We can't walk up on the street and demand a search. Even police can't do that. They have to have a reasonable suspicion as to why they need that search. So if cops can't do it, certainly security guards can't do it, right? We can only do it with permission as a condition of entry, or if, and you'd better be able to articulate this clearly to a judge who doesn't like security guards, you can do a search of persons for weapons or search of bags, but there are much better alternatives and ways to keep the peace. We're going to speak about defensive tactics for a little bit because we've got some really good questions coming in. We've got a couple that kind of back-to-back each other. Can security guards use handcuffs? And can security guards use force? And just to tie this together, those are the same thing. even if I apply handcuffs gently to somebody who's going along with it, yes, I am absolutely using force. In Canada, if I put out my hand and I make contact to stop someone, or if I even stop their forward progress, I am using force at that point. And I do need candidates for security to understand. Uh, in other nations, they are very much more loose about use of force, etc., and they are very FAFO, and they are much on the side, and everybody sort of shrugs and say, "Well, don't resist security or cops." Then we are different up here. We have a lot of British in our history, and the use of force is very much frowned on. And will be examined in great detail at minimum by your supervisors, and more likely in 99% of the cases by police officers, and potentially by prosecutors and judges. So let's understand that using handcuffs is a last resort. We do have one client that does require every single person, even shoplifters, to be put in cuffs. But they have a written policy explaining that, and their insurance company is fully aware, and I'm sure they charged them some exorbitant rates because they had that policy in place. Handcuffs, it is very easy to break the tiny bones in someone's wrist if you use handcuffs improperly. So, can we use handcuffs? The answer is not until you have taken a course in the handcuffs, not until you have been properly certified, and you will carry that condition on your license. You can notify the ministry when you go to redo your licensing that you have authority to use handcuffs from your security firm. You can't use your own cuffs. You must have the cuffs issued to you and registered by serial number. So if you're working for ABC Security Company, ABC Security Company must give you handcuffs that are theirs, that they are used, that they have registered with their insurance provider. And then you will write down the serial number on those cuffs, and you will only use those cuffs. And you had better use them bloody sparingly. The only time I use handcuffs now is if I have a potential threat to my own safety. If I have to arrest somebody, for example, to wait for police and they have been assaultive or they're under the influence, I will probably at that point elect to use handcuffs. Okay? Sometimes, though, if it's on the borderline, I will simply ask them to sit down on their backside, cross their ankles, and leave their hands in their lap. And I will inform them that if they attempt to get up, I will use force on them. I will put them in handcuffs face down on the ground. Okay? And that usually gets them to cooperate. And that's the ultimate goal. If somebody's being cooperative and you use cuffs on them, I really do have to question your judgment skills. So, can we use them? Yes, if they are issued to you by your company, properly registered, and the ministry is aware that you're using handcuffs, yes, you can use handcuffs and be issued. Other than that, don't even have them on your person. Can security guards use force? When it's reasonable. If I have somebody coming towards me and they are empty-handed, what should I be doing? Run away. For goodness sake, that's always an option. And I think a lot of guards get into extra conflicts they don't need to because of ego, because they feel like they don't want to be embarrassed by backing up. Listen to me. The worst fight I have ever had in my life came from a woman, I kid you not, I think she was about 4'2". And wow, she fought like a cornered animal. So I like to say, learn from my mistakes. First off, don't ever assume that that little person can't take you, because she darn near did get me. And when the cops arrived and I was still wrestling her, they were in hysterics. They actually turned their car around to point their car's dash cam at me. And I'm pretty sure that I made the highlight reel at the briefing at 11 p.m. that night. In any case, humor aside, yes, we can use proportional force. There is a theory out there that used to be called the force plus one. It is now clearly illustrated in something called the force wheel, which you should have been educated on during your training, or if you haven't taken training yet, you will be educated on. And effectively, what it says is that I can escalate one step where it's reasonable. So if someone comes at me with bare hands, I may be able to draw and deploy an impact weapon, like a baton. And just like handcuffs, you have to be licensed to carry that baton. You better have had some really good training, because you can kill somebody with that if you apply it to the wrong part of their body in the wrong way. So it has to be reasonable. I have to be able to explain to a judge that doesn't like security guards, why did you bring out your baton? And sometimes I have had to deploy it less than a dozen times in my career. And usually when I bring it out and I extend it, it is forcible. Whack. And you can hear that noise everywhere. It is unmistakable what it is. And at that point, I have been yelling at that person to gain compliance. Stop or I'll use my baton. Stop or I will hit you with my baton. Stop assaulting me. I am broadcasting to everyone in existence around me why I am about to do this. Because if I walk into court without having given them every chance to disengage, surrender, and run away and stop using force on me, I am going to be looked at cross-eyed, and I am going to face the Inquisition. And rightly so. We don't want security guards that can't wait to start taking out their frustrations on people with weapons. It's absolutely terrible. Yes, if issued and trained for and insured by your firm. If you're working for multiple firms, you can't take your handcuffs or baton from one firm and automatically just use them at the next firm. Right? You should only be working for one firm at a time anyway, realistically, but we know that people work multiple jobs, so you need to be aware of that, right? If you aren't issued that weapon and you show up to my shift carrying that on your belt, you will be turning around and going home. You will be off duty immediately. That's not everybody. Some people will be a little less absolute, but I need to be able to demonstrate that we will adhere to the law at all times. So, can they carry weapons? Generally speaking, you will not carry firearms. You will not carry conductive energy weapons, taser, to overuse a brand name, but they don't mind. You certainly will not carry your own weaponry. I don't care if you have the full security suite at home, with your ASP extendable baton and your own Smith & Wesson cuffs and your own taser. No, you will not be bringing those to work. Absolutely not. They are unreliable. We don't know if they're going to work or not. And we're not just going to take your word for it. Okay. On very rare occasions, when we are doing personal protection gigs, that would be bodyguarding, the client will request weapons. For example, we had a jeweler in Toronto who requested us to drive him to and from his jewelry lockup. Not only did we carry sidearms, but he actually had a permit for concealed carry. So anybody who tried to get the briefcase from around his wrist was going to get a pretty epic surprise. But he was ferocious about training. If we didn't have a specific class of weapons permit, that we really didn't need for what we were carrying, but he wanted to make sure he had the best and the quietest and the best judgment available to him on his security team. And we were allowed to only carry when we were escorting him to the jewels repository. If there were no jewels on or about his person, we had to lock the weapons in a carry case in the car. It was inaccessible to us. So the rules concerning weapons in Canada are, I would submit, perhaps borderline draconian, but they are that way for a reason when it comes to security. Note that this is not anything political. I do not at work carry any views on whether people should be allowed to carry guns off duty on their own, etc., and neither shall you. You will not engage in political debate, for example, on weaponry, etc., while you are on duty. The moment you're not sure if you should call police or not. If there is a question as to whether you should call police or not, police dispatchers are tremendous people. I could not do their job. I could not sit in a little room and listen to people holler for help all day. I just couldn't do it. It would completely, so those are exalted creatures. For me, dispatchers are on a level with emergency department nurses. I absolutely adore them. They are fantastic people, and they are very, very comforting when you call because they have been doing this for years. They have heard your call before. When you call police, please surrender control of the call to the dispatcher. Don't try to control the call. Know where you are, know your cross streets, know a cross callback number, and be able to tell them very quickly what's happening. Now, remember, they're not waiting for them to hang up to start sending the police. The police are already on the way the moment they hear what's going on and where it is. Okay? So calm down when you do. But if you're not sure if you should call police, know your local police department's non-emergency number. That's fantastic. Instead of calling 911, you can call and it'll be answered in queue, and they have specialized people who just man those non-emergency lines. And they're able to give you advice, and they're able to say, you know what, let me send you a unit. And that's fantastic. So if you're not sure, call the police. They absolutely are there, and they absolutely are on your side. So instances of trespassing, I am going to ask people simply to leave. I'm not going to try to involve the police. If I'm working at a bar and somebody is intoxicated, I'm not going to waste the police's time. I'm just going to ask them to leave. If I can solve the situation calmly, professionally, and within the policies of my property owner, some of them want arrests for everything, then I am going to try to resolve that without arrest. So if I don't have to call the cops, I won't. If there is any threat to person, past or present, I will immediately call police. Let them have the judgment call whether to arrest or not at that point. If there is a past threat to property, I will generally not, unless there is some damage that requires a police report number. If there is an ongoing threat to property, somebody, for example, is being disorderly, breaking glass, smashing furniture, yes, absolutely. At that point, we are going to call the police. So use your good judgment skills there. This is absolutely the best tool in our toolkit. The Trespass to Property Act is an absolutely phenomenal little piece of legislation. I can bar somebody from a property for a period of time, for specific reasons, and instead of calling the police for a young man who has just shoplifted, the young man who's tried to steal the toy police car was of mine. He was extremely embarrassed, and so I gave him a choice. Young man, I can call the police here and you can wind up with a criminal record. Or you can call your mom. Uh-oh, you should have seen the panic on his face as soon as I said that. And we can have her come down here and get you, and I will just ban you from the mall for a while. Your choice. Those are the only two choices. And at the look on his face, I was trying not to lose myself in laughter. I was ready to crack completely up. Poor kid. He was terrified down to his toenails. Do I really need to make it worse at that point? No, use your judgment. When Mom arrived, and this is interesting because we did have Mom arrive, and the immediate first assertion was that we only arrested him because he was black. And we did have a humorous moment. My partner is from the Bahamas and is black as well. And he just stuck his head out of the back office and just said hi to her. And that objection vanished very quickly. And that was fantastic. We were able to remove the objection without having to get into an argument or start in on anybody's feelings. That was great. That does happen on occasion. You know, you're only doing this because I am a certain demographic, right? So what we opted to do at that point is we were actually a little creative. We got our heads together and we said to the young man, you are not allowed to come back to this mall unless you were in the company of your mom. Imagine what happened when his friends at school got hold of that one. You can only go to the mall with your moms. You could have just heard that coming for miles, especially in the area we were working. And we said, this will expire in 90 days. Okay, so for the next 3 months, you can only come to the mall if you're in the actual company of your mother, except in the washroom. You can obviously go to the bathroom by yourself. And we made sure that we were crystal clear about why. We really believe that you don't actually intend to make a career out of stealing stuff. And he started shaking his head very aggressively, like, you're never going to do this again, right? Okay, well, you got to serve a penalty. You're out of here for 90 days. On August 1st, you can come back by yourself, provided you don't do this again. Right? So use your judgment. Be creative. Try to be a little kinder than you need to be. Trespass to property, if somebody refuses to leave, there's actually a section of the criminal code that says if you refuse to leave when you are directed by someone in lawful possession of property, let's break that down. Somebody who the owner says, yeah, you're there to work for me. Security guards? Yes, we can actually physically eject someone from the property. Does that mean that we can throw them out on their head? Oh, please don't do that. Don't take out your frustration or use unnecessary force. We want to make sure you're going to avoid liability. You could be sued for that. You can be criminally charged from that. So at that point, if I have somebody who is absolutely, abjectly refusing to leave, I will call the police. I will simply give them the option and say, I am on the phone with the police here. They're waiting to hear your answer. Either you walk out or you will have the police remove you from the property, and they are not going to be impressed with having to waste their time to do this, right? So at that point, you've offered them a really good choice, and hopefully, and most of the time in my career, they have taken the road of least resistance, which is very smart, fantastic, go write your reports. But if I got somebody who's refused after repeated reasonable requests and every effort to leave the property, for example, when I was working at the housing authority, I had somebody who had broken up with her boyfriend, and she was the lawful occupant of property. And she actually informed us, which was very nice. Most people don't, that he was not welcome on property anymore. So we were able to keep an eye on him, because domestic disputes frequently do immediately go to assault when someone is frustrated. And unrequited love is, frankly, a very big causative event. So he kept coming on the property. And night after night after night, we would go out there, we would challenge him, and we would say, I'll just use the name Frank. Frankie, you can't come back on the property. You know this. I know you love her. I know you think you're going to try to win her back, but she has told us flat, you're not allowed back on the property. If you don't leave right now, I'm going to arrest you for trespassing. Do you understand? Okay, man, you gotta go. And the first few times he was fairly compliant. And then, one time he stood his ground and he says, no, make me. And we tried to convince him for maybe another half hour. And finally, I just made the decision and said, okay, he's really not going to go. He really means it. And I said, okay, Frankie, listen, last chance. We're going to put you in cuffs. We're going to physically remove you. Do you understand? And at that point, if I'm going to take physical action against somebody, I want the cops on the way. I want my backside covered by somebody with a badge, right? And so, the dispatcher had advised, you know what, this is a pretty low priority call. We're pretty busy in the district. It's going to be a while. And so I tried giving him every chance. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw the cruiser pulling into the driveway leading to our office. And I said, okay, Frankie, I'm sorry to do this, but you're under arrest. And I always coach the officers with me that I'm the one to say you are under arrest as the supervisor. That's protecting them. But at the moment you hear it, everyone swarms him standing, not violently. We don't swarm him and start punching him. We swarm him, we grab a wrist, we grab an elbow, and we, if necessary, we can take him safely to the ground at that point, put his hands behind his back, and arrest him. At that point, I informed him, Frankie, you're under arrest for trespass to property act, failed to leave when directed. We're going to go to the office to keep you safe, and I'm going to hand you over to the cops, and they're going to take it from there, okay? So, buddy, we're going to stand you up now. I find that if you explain everything that you're going to do to them, very often you meet with less resistance. Listen, security may affect things like arrests on occasion, and we are quasi-enforcement, but we are rules enforcement. If you start thinking of yourself as law enforcement while you're working in security, I would like you to really examine that, because that is a slippery slope that can lead to you starting to think that you're allowed to be cops, and you're not. There is a vast gulf between police and security. Vast gulf. Okay, police, for example, in Canada, there's no such thing as jurisdiction. A police officer in Ontario is a police officer for Ontario, and it says that directly in the law. We are restricted to events on or in relation to our property. So, if you're working as a mobile guard, okay, and you witness a criminal act that's not to do with any of your properties, that you're not contracted to do security, think hard before you start taking action. I would rather you simply called the police. But if it's a matter of life and death, then recognize, yes, Section 494 does give me the ability to effect an arrest to save a life. So, what's the difference between police and security? The world. Security is there for customer service for one little pocket and one little property. Police are there to enforce all the laws. Read that word, force. Okay, they are allowed to do a lot more than we are. And it is simply routine for police to do that because theoretically their training is better than ours. I'm going to tell you that our training is far superior here, but that's a more proper and neither here nor there. The police are legally trained and certified for things, for example, like gunfire. Okay, they're allowed to do things like preemptive arrests. Okay, they're allowed to release someone from custody. Security guards can't do that. Once we arrest somebody, they stay arrested until a cop says they're not. Okay, so plain and simple. There are worlds of difference between police and security, and some of our employers, at the request of their clients, like to have us wearing police-style uniforms. The province has even taken great steps to make sure that there are great distinctions between security and police on our uniforms. The great big security patch, right, on our back, etc. Okay, so understand there are reasons for those laws. Some politician didn't just decide, hey, you know what? Heck with security, let's make them do this. No, there have been a lot of police impersonators in security. So don't be one of them, please. Allow me to be that guy for a second. You're going to jail. I'm going to let that sit there heavy for a second. If you exceed your authority and you assault someone, that is assault. And it is going to be treated even more harshly than if a regular citizen who is not a security guard did the same crime. There's going to be an example made of you at court because the judge is going to feel the need to tell the security industry as a whole not to do that. You are more liable for excesses of authority. If you arrest somebody improperly, you can be liable civilly too. You absolutely can be sued if you exceed your authority. You must demonstrate restraint. If you're not 100% sure or you weren't trained for it, don't do it unless somebody's life or safety is at risk. Okay? I think that is the best advice I can possibly give you. Because if you exceed your authority, I am telling you straight up, you are going to jail. Oh man, not knowing the law. I can tell you straight up, you don't need to be a lawyer, but there are certain segments you need to be able to quote and debate. I am able to debate the Trespass to Property Act for hours. Do you know why I can do that? Because I'm waiting for the cops to arrive. That's fantastic. I love being in a debate with subjects while I'm waiting for the cops because I'm responsible for their safety. But if they're sitting there arguing with me, are they assaulting me? No. Are they trying to escape? No. Very often what they're waiting for is they're like, hey man, it's the first time they'll be glad to see cops, right? And they're sitting there and they're thinking, you know, hey cops, look, this rent-a-cop, he told me I'm under arrest. Only cops can do that. Man, the number of times I've had that happen, and the cops just sort of shrug and laugh and say, oh, are you going to have a bad day? And they say to them, yes, actually, we are going to continue the arrest that the security guard lawfully made. And at that point, what you have to do is kind of resist the urge to tell them, told you so. And that really makes things worse, and they're going to be back one day, so just don't do that. Not knowing the law is the basis for every legal mistake that a security guard makes. There's no reason for you not to be curiously professional. There's no reason for you not to read the law. Every once in a while, I still take long shifts just so that I can remind myself of what you guys feel like when you're out there. If I am sitting there, I have guarded a ship overnight in a dock that does nothing. I have sat there, and you know what I do? For a little while during the middle of my shift, when I start getting a little too bored, I will drag up the criminal code on my phone and I will refresh myself on Section 494, the use of force statutes, the Trespass to Property Act. Absolutely. And I want to make sure that I still know that stuff absolutely cold. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Can you name, for example, you have the freedom to protection, you can't be discriminated on based on a whole bunch of characters, right? What are those characteristics, right? So I would like to have a security force where all of my guards were able to, at least rudimentarily, answer and tell me that how they understand the legal system a little bit, and able to say, yeah, you know what's the difference between indictable and summary? What does this section of the criminal code state? When can we arrest? Why? Okay, I'm going to give you an example, right? And I love it when my guards are able to answer that. It gives me the confidence to be able to put them in places where they'll have to exercise their judgment all on their own. And I would suspect that they will probably make more money in their career than somebody who doesn't bother making the effort to be curious.